You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of June 9th, 2023. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we outlasted Chuck Todd and David Gregory. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Yay! Yay for us! Yay!
And since we are visiting with family this week, we're putting up a hybrid episode entitled No Fair Remembering the Professional Left Podcast. So stick around after the closing music for a recording of our first public appearance outside the podcast world of the Professional Left.
Now you have the cool audio. You have the audio in there, but I believe we have video as well to go with this.
Yes, so it is up at YouTube at the Heartland Cafe YouTube page.
We might include a link. I don't know. That could happen.
I think it could happen.
Yeah.
Since this week dropped a couple of stories right in our media criticism wheelhouse, we're going to start off with all of that. Specifically, I think we have to start with the most prestigious of all political media, Driftglass. The Sunday shows. Yeah. Remember those? Remember how prestigious they used to be?
The John McCain Express, the gold standard. It's where everyone goes to get their trial balloons launched on a Sunday.
Yeah, they do. And some of them even announce on the Sunday shows.
They do.
The longest running show on American television is Meet the Press. That is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because now it's kind of garbage.
Yeah.
Sunday shows are just kind of a waste of time at this point, but
they're garbage. Yep.
They have been for a long time. Many, many years.
Well, and that's sort of my fault because I made them that way.
It's all your fault, Driftglass.
I have been blogging now for 18 years. And over those 18 years, I have written literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of posts about the state of the Sunday shows. It was a regular feature at my blog that I called Sunday Morning Coming Down. And for years, for decades, really, rain or shine, I'd watch all I could stand of the Sunday shows. And then I'd commit my deep and ponderous thoughts to digital paper. And my thoughts were always like, Jesus, Mary, and Edward Murrow, who watches this crap? Or how do these buffoons still have jobs? And or how can this freak show go on and on week after week after week? So hundreds and hundreds of posts over better part of 2 decades. And with Meet the Press, I started with Tim Russert's appalling log rolling for the Bush administration and the Iraq War. Then I went on to the David Gregory disaster and lasted all through that. And that was followed by the Chuck Todd travesty, which has now come to an end.
Right, because Chuck Todd's been fired.
He's been fired.
And so we're going to combine this breaking news with a little bit of remembering. Again, this is a hybrid episode.
Yes.
Remembering the Chuck Todd era at NBC. Go ahead, Driftglass. You begin.
Well, I think we should have some of that, who we lost this year music from the Oscars. Because, Chuck Todd as
remembrance, huh?
Now he belongs to the ages.
Oh, Lord.
First, it is weird to me. It has always been weird to me that no one remembers David Gregory. I know this is about Chuck Todd, but the weird thing is nobody remembers David Gregory at all. He was both terrible at that job and very, very good at that job. He was brought in to be a both-siderist hack, and he was very good at that. David Gregory excelled at that. We called him Fluffy because he was fluffy. He was terrible. But at the same time, he also was supposed to keep pretending that he was an actual journalist. And he absolutely sucked at that. He was terrible at that. Eventually, NBC fired his ass over the phone while he was out driving, which, is kind of cold even for them. Then they brought in Chuck Todd, who was exactly as terrible as David Gregory in exactly the same ways. But the weird thing is that almost immediately, everyone forgot that David Gregory had ever existed. He just vanished. Somehow, everyone began remembering that there was Tim Russert, and then Tim Russert died, and he'd been replaced by Chuck Todd, and that was an awful thing. But David Gregory just disappeared from the public consciousness. They just
even though David Gregory had personally resurrected Newt Gingrich's career.
Oh yeah, David Gregory was was in many ways just worse than Chuck Todd, because he went out of his way. His characteristic move was have Newt Gingrich on as often as possible and never ask him a hard question. Every time Newt Gingrich said something racist or insane, bring him on Meet the Press to reestablish his credibility and whitewash his career. So you can thank that asshole for Newt Gingrich still being around. And this is the one that just always cracked me up because it crossed my streams. It was David Gregory almost every week would either have David Brooks on to read a shitty David Brooks column aloud, and then ask David Brooks what he thought about David Brooks' own column, and then ask everybody around the table, don't you agree David Brooks is a fucking genius? Or if David Brooks was not available, if he was, cheating on his wife, or he was doing speeches somewhere, David Gregory would just read his column out loud and then ask the same question. Don't you think David Brooks is a genius? And everybody, yeah, he's a goddamn genius. And that went on for years until they fired him. Then Chuck Todd came along.
And occasionally some dim memory of journalism would stir in Chuck's mind.
Yeah.
And we always caught him out on this. He would just, his high dudgeon at, Trump's lying, or when Hope Hicks resigned the day after she admitted to Congress that Donald Trump sometimes required her to tell lies. And he flipped out over that.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to talk about it.
2018, he flipped out. All lives matter, he said. Yeah. And I took that opportunity when he did that, all lives matter, to check the Crooks and Liars archive for the multiple times Chuck Todd let a Republican lie on his own program.
Yeah.
And so here's just the videos that we found in the archives in 2018. Chuck Todd allows Ted Cruz to repeat Planned Parenthood lies unchallenged. Chuck Todd allows Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan to spew conspiracy theories about the Steele dossier. On his show, Chuck Todd let Hugh Hewitt lie about Sean Spicer. He told Chuck Todd to his face that Sean Spicer's lies about the inauguration crowd size were due to the fact that some staffer gave Sean Spicer bad data.
Yeah, the sun got in his eyes, and it was not a regulation court, and whatever. Yeah.
Chuck Todd then, on another show, blamed Republicans' unprecedented obstruction against Barack Obama on the fact, and I am not making this up, that Barack Obama is out there fundraising for Democratic candidates.
Yeah. You call that
and
bipartisan?
How dare he?
That's not bipartisanship, Luca. How come he wasn't raising money for both sides of candidates?
And then, and this is kind of important to remember, with no fair remembering stuff. Such an egregious thing. The Morning Joe panel talking about how passing Obamacare was a terrible thing. Yeah. This was in 2012, 2013. 2013, that Barack Obama hadn't messaged right and that Obamacare was terribly unpopular. And who was on this panel? Chuck Todd and Nicole Wallace.
Yeah, that's right.
And Nicole Wallace is saying, I just can't believe how horrible this bill is and how terrible it is. And everybody hates it. And they showed poll numbers showing everybody hates Obamacare. Well, it hadn't even been implemented yet. And Chuck Todd claimed that, look, it's not my job to correct Republican lies on Obamacare. It's Obama's job to sell his program.
Right.
And the fact that average voters will simply repeat Republican lies about Obamacare to your face, Chuck Todd, isn't my fault if I don't correct them.
Not my job. It isn't my job to tell you the truth.
It's not my job.
At all.
It's not my job.
People. Nope,
not my job. So,
and when they lie, it's not my job to correct them at all.
And if they convince the American people that, COVID isn't real, they can come and cough on me, right? Yeah. Chuck Todd would always fall back to his default setting of both sides do it. And he got famous for it. No Republican follow-up question. And you got to hand it to Trevor Noah this year at the White House Correspondents' Dinner for making a joke about it and pointing out to everybody in that room what was so obvious that Chuck Todd doesn't know what a follow-up question is. He said, Chuck Todd, how are you? I'd ask a follow-up question, but Chuck doesn't know what those are. And Chuck Todd once boldly declared that climate change deniers would no longer be welcome on Meet the Press. The end. You're not coming on anymore. And then a few weeks later, he'd have a climate change denier on. And I guess they were cool again as long as they didn't talk about climate change.
Yeah.
So he would have these people on who were clearly lobbyists for the fossil fuel industry.
Mm-hmm.
But because they were just talking about how bad Obama is,
right, that's okay.
They get a seat at the show.
Sure. It's just that one thing you can't talk about. And eventually that would slip away too. Yeah. He would do that. He would half rise to the occasion every now and then. The last episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, when we're talking about, when donkeys fly, it doesn't freak me out that they crash back to Earth. It freaks me out that they fly at all.
Yeah.
It's the idea that Chuck Todd would occasionally, in a very half-assed way, kind of rise to the occasion and then collapse right back. In 2018, this is why we keep archives, Blue Gal. There's a long article in The Atlantic by Chuck Todd about how, and I'm quoting now, quote, "It's time for the press to stop complaining and start fighting back. A nearly 50-year campaign of vilification inspired by Fox News' Roger Ailes has left many Americans distrustful of media outlets. Now journalists need to speak up for their work," unquote. In this very long article, he lays the blame for what's wrong with the media and why so many people don't trust the media squarely at the feet of Roger Ailes, Fox News, and conservative radio. There was even this quote, "For years, I didn't say a word about this publicly, and at times I even caught myself drawing false equivalences," Jesus Christ, "because I was afraid of being labeled as biased. I know that stating the obvious will draw attacks, but I've also learned the louder the critics bark, the more they care about what's being reported," unquote.
Then less than a month later, quote, "Let's be blunt. Our political parties are waging a cold civil war, and as Amy Walter argues so well, each side rationalizes their bad behavior by pointing to the bad behavior of their opponent. The incentive structure punishes moderation."
Damn it. Damn that incentive structure. Like Chuck Todd's show.
Then he was dragged on social media because of what he said just a month ago in The Atlantic.
It was in print and everything.
That was in print. And he said this, quote, "Wish there was a way to filter #whataboutism off of Twitter." Yeah, I'll bet you do. "Too many folks on Twitter can't make a proactive case for something, so they resort to a lazy whatabout trope," unquote.
Yeah, the lazy, what
like,
about
what about what you wrote a month ago?
Right. Remember, Blue Gal, remember,
whataboutism.
That's the past. That's the past. And it's no fair remembering stuff applies at all times and places.
Yeah.
Now, my rarest Chuck Todd artifact, I bring it out at parties. I let people get a glimpse of it, but it's very rare. And I'm just about the only person who wrote about it, is a 2015 almost lost to history appearance on The Moment radio show with Brian Koppelman, in which Chuck Todd made it perfectly clear that he definitely knows what business he's in. He went into great detail about how it was definitely not his job to, irritate his guests by letting his audience know when they're flatly lying or they're insane, even when he knows for a fact that they are. That now, on Meet the Press, poor Chuck has to worry about numbers and not just the news.
Aww.
So sad. But this is a long interview, 72 minutes long, but Chuck Todd clearly knows that people are just coming on his show to dump lies into the public sphere. And he's like, not my job. If I piss them off, they won't come back. What I do is just entertainment and blah, 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 blah.
And this whole thing of someone complained to me this week about why is Asa Hutchinson on Meet the Press
right
every week?
Because
and he's on at least every other week. It's because NBC is constantly searching for a reasonable Republican. Right. So that you think the Republican Party is reasonable.
Yeah. That's the job. They're fitting Chris Christie for that suit now.
And it's Chris Christie's job is to kick Donald Trump in the balls.
Well, Chris
not
Christie,
to win. It's not to raise money. It's not to do any of that. His only use is to just bruise Donald Trump's crotch over and over again.
Well, and that's true. But what Chris Christie is a thin-skinned, down-punching bully and liar who helped Donald Trump get elected.
Which makes him a match for Donald Trump.
Right. But what they're doing in the media is they're making him into this moderate Republican.
Yeah.
He's the moderate Republican. And this is all because John McCain died. I didn't have anybody else to bring on every goddamn week to see, there's one. We got one of them. There must be more out there. It's like,
and no one's heard of Asa Hutchinson except on Meet the Press. Yeah.
No.
And here is Todd in 2014 on the air, really talking about comedy mostly.
Right.
With Louis Black, W. Kamau Bell, and Laura Kraft, explaining that he knows full well that he's in the access business and that if he pushes a guest too hard, they will stop coming on his show. And watch how W. Kamau Bell flattens him.
Yeah.
I think people think that when people watch Jon Stewart or John Oliver, they feel like they're at least getting that person's perspective. But I don't think people believe with the news. I think they feel like they're you're getting a corporation's perspective. You're not getting that individual person.
Should you guys be held responsible if people are cynical and think all government's broken? Because that's the other premise of this initial article.
No. That started way before this.
Right.
I really do think part of the problem is that the cynicism is caused by the fact that more in the course of my lifetime and having lived in Washington, that Washington is increasingly in a bubble, much the same way that a lot of people who live in Hollywood are in a bubble. When I started going on the road 25 years ago and I was told, well, you're too angry, they're not going to get it. What I was discovering was they were angrier than I was. And there's a sense of disenfranchisement now that I think is seen in the number of people who went and voted that I have just never experienced in my lifetime. Right. And I've watched you and everybody else where somebody comes on and I don't know how you do it because I don't know how you do it. I'd be barking at them because they'll sit there and go, and you sit there.
We all sit there because we all know the first time we bark, it's the last time we do the show.
Yeah.
There's something sometimes where it's the last time you're ever, all of a sudden, nobody will come on your show, right? Yeah. There is that balance sometimes.
And the thing that comedy gets to do that Stewart
you get to do some stuff that we don't.
Right? Yeah, comedy gets to bark. And I think that, but the weird thing is that Fox News also gets to bark. And I think sometimes the left, the left-leaning media is afraid of barking. And so the comic, you see this in a lot of left-wing media. They will play a clip of The Daily Show, or they will play a clip of John Oliver and go, "Look at this guy barking." Anyway, back to a reasonable discussion. Even though I know that's what I want you to believe, let me have the reasonable discussion.
And it is really clear. I mean, we remember this from Chris Matthews constantly having my friend Jon Stewart clips on his show.
That's right.
Because Jon Stewart could say it and no one on MSNBC was allowed to be honest like that about Fox.
And this is really what a lot of this kind of provocation is what inspired the liberal blogosphere all the way back in the 2000s, which was very clearly something horribly, horribly wrong is happening with the Republican Party, with Republican media. They're lying. People are dying over it. And the people who are constitutionally charged with reporting that fact to the American people are refusing to do it. Right. Something has gone grossly wrong with the system. And that's where liberals became the only voices out there calling out people like Chuck Todd and David Gregory and so on and so forth. And we made ourselves into pariahs because you're never supposed to talk about this shit. You're absolutely not allowed to talk about the fact that these people come on the air and lie and millions of people believe it because they're on Meet the Goddamn Press. And the Goddamn Press is very respectable. So if he said it on there, it must be legit. Mm-hmm. And the reverse of the power dynamic that no, the guests should be fighting to come on your show.
Right.
Because you're influential. But you're afraid you'll scare them away by pointing out the fact they're lying through their teeth to the American people. And that is
why did you have a reputation for unwavering honesty and get people to fight to be on your show? Exactly.
He wants to have 3 homes and a boat. That's why.
And this has been the ebb and flow of Todd's tenure at Meet the Press. Cravenly platforming the worst hacks and apologists on the right, then a sudden attack of conscience, then someone from NBC corporate yanks his leash, then back to catering to the worst hacks and apologists on the right.
Mm-hmm.
And what is so clear about both David Gregory and Chuck Todd and their years in that seat at Meet the Press is that the bland awfulness is exactly what the suits in the C-suites upstairs want in that seat.
That's an argument I've been having on Twitter for years, which is why do you think a new person is going to change anything?
No.
This is, Chuck Todd didn't wander onto the studio and grab a microphone and become host. They hired him because he was this guy. It's like they hired David Gregory because he was that guy. They want that sort of person in that chair. And that's a decision being made off camera, as you said, in the C-suite somewhere. Now, speaking of the C-suites in cable news, this has been a big week for people like us. Chris Licht, you might know him as the paste-eating former Joe Scarborough henchman that David Zaslav put in charge of CNN to purge actual journalists and make the network much more Trump-friendly. he too has been fired. And he wasn't fired because he wasn't doing his job. And his job was doing his boss's bidding. He got fired for doing it so incompetently that people noticed he was doing it. That's why he got fired. He embarrassed his boss. And you can't do that because then your boss loses face and has to cut bait. And you, sir, are now the bait. By the way, the people who've been talking most about Chris Licht most accurately, we got to say, have been people like Keith Olbermann, who knew him way back when, who knew him when his job at MSNBC was to sabotage everyone else, stab everyone else in the back, and promote the career of Joe Scarborough. And now that Joe Scarborough has 4 hours in the morning and is the most respected voice at MSNBC, got to say Chris Licht did a really good job of being a really awful person.
There's a wonderful op-ed by Perry Bacon Jr. I can't believe I'm saying those words in a row.
Yeah.
And not that I hate Perry Bacon Jr. I don't, but he's always been kind of a, conventional wisdom kind of seat filler when I've seen him on television. But he did an op-ed in the Washington Post today about Chris Licht and anti-woke centrism. And you've really got to read it. It is amazing. I tweeted it out. I'll share it on other social media. It's worth reading. He goes after Chris Licht and he goes after Sulzberger. I mean, everybody that you think you need to go after. It's these white guys in the C-suite who think that any criticism of them or their platform is what all of Twitter is saying.
That's right.
And that they just live in this bubble. And because they're safely ensconced in a Democratic-run megalopolis where no one's going to challenge their right to get married to who they want to get married to, they just forget, I think, that there are people out there whose lives, whose livelihoods, whose ability to have bodily autonomy are really threatened. And I think it's not just that Perry Bacon Jr. is a black man. It's because he moved back to Kentucky.
Yes, he did. That's right. Oops.
And that perspective makes you see, I have to worry living in Kentucky whether my rights are going to be removed by a state legislature.
Yeah.
And people in the C-suites, whether they're in Washington or D.C. or L.A., they just don't have to worry about that. And so everything is about, I just don't want to be attacked for expressing any doubt about transgender rights. And it's like, first of all, being attacked and criticized for your opinions is free speech. People are allowed to do that.
Oh, no. Not in the C-suites, it's not. No.
Nope. Free speech is all about Chris Licht's ability to Republicanize CNN. Yes.
Right. And when you live and the only voices around you tell you that you're the biggest stud in the universe and you smell sweetly.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
Great idea.
And anybody who's got a contrary opinion of something you believe in is being partisan, Blue Gal.
Partisan.
And you can, or tribal. They're being tribal and partisan. Therefore, you can safely dismiss them because partisanship is inherently bad. Partisanship means you believe in a thing. That's all it means. So what you're saying is, I don't believe in anything, which we kind of know.
Except my money and my job and the fact that I'm great and everything we do is great here at whatever network I work at. Yep. Let's do a news roundup, dear class.
Let's do a news roundup, Blue Gal. You want to go first?
No, I want you to go first.
Well, breaking news. Speaking of an area outside of the blue bubbles where C-suite people live, Oklahoma has approved the first religious charter school in the United States, setting up a battle over whether taxpayers can directly fund religious schools.
Fun fact, they can't.
They can't.
This was a wonderful example of everything we've been talking about. CNN described the boycott of Bud Light by right-wing bigots as a, quote, self-induced injury, unquote.
Yep.
Roughly 2 months after Bud Light endured a self-induced injury that torpedoed sales, the brand continues to lose ground to its competition. But there are signs the worst might be over, says CNN. You know what? It's getting hot.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be boycotting Target in November.
Right.
When Christianity gets shoved down everybody's throat in the form of Christmas.
And this is CNN saying, under Chris Licht saying, why do you keep punching yourself? Why do you keep punching yourself, Bud Light? This is from Forbes, speaking of, entitled billionaires who are getting what they deserve. Twitter's U.S. ad sales are down 59% despite Elon Musk's breaking even claims. Twitter's revenues from U.S. advertising in April was down 59% from the previous year. And the New York Times reported Monday, after major advertisers left the social media platform following billionaire Elon Musk's takeover, though Musk claimed 2 months ago that the site was breaking even. I know he's breaking it, but it's not even. The social media company estimates its U.S. ad revenues will be down at least 56% each week in May, compared to this time last year, per the Times. Twitter's global ad revenue this year is estimated to be 28% lower than it was in 2022, at around $3 billion. That's a lot of blue check marks, according to research firm Insider Intelligence, as Twitter's top 50 advertisers are spending markedly less since Musk took over the company in October.
Trump lawyers were seen departing the Justice Department as a federal grand jury expected to meet this week. The Bob Cesca rule says he'll be indicted just as soon as all the liberal podcasts have this week's episodes in the can.
Yeah.
Driftglass right now, Espionage Act is trending.
Oh my.
Andrew Feinberg is reporting that prosecutors are ready to ask for grand jurors to vote on a Trump indictment as early as tomorrow on charges of obstruction of justice and violations of the Espionage Act.
Holy crap. Well, you know what? Let's hurry up and finish this podcast so he can be indicted.
So he can get indicted?
Walk faster, Blue Gal. And speaking of Jack Smith, he has secretly had 2 different grand juries in the Trump classified documents probe all along, which is kind of cool. He's got one in a backup, I guess. Good for him.
Yeah, in Florida. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Deadpool. It is now being reported that in October, a Mar-a-Lago employee, it was an accident, Driftglass.
It was an accident.
Drained the resort's pool, the water from the pool, it was an accident. Just so happened to flood the room where the computer servers, which contained the resort's surveillance video logs, were located. Oops. Yeah. Mar-a-Lago, we call that an oopsie.
An oopsie. This is what we call it, stupid Watergate. I don't know who built this, but when you put your high-tech, electronic, highly sensitive equipment shed next to a large body of water with a way to get from one to the other by opening a door, maybe that was an accident. I think the little door between the two places is called a water gate, but I could be wrong. Moving on. This is from Governor Gavin Newsom. Ron DeSantis, you small, pathetic man. This isn't Martha's Vineyard. Kidnapping charges. And then Gavin Newsom cited the applicable criminal statutes.
Wow, I hope he goes to jail for that.
I do too.
SAG-AFTRA members authorize a strike. Nearly 98% vote for work stoppage. Union President Fran Drescher, bless her heart. Remember her in UHF? She was so good. She called the vote aimed at improving the organization's leverage prior to its negotiations with studios and streamers, an achievement. Yeah. Streaming has changed everything, and you have to recalibrate how everybody gets paid because of it. That's it.
I know we're doing it, and
we have to get paid too, Driftglass.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. But now that, and this is local news, so we don't need as much money as we used to, Blue Gal. It's almost 1 year to the day since gas prices hit an all-time high in Springville, where we live. But 1 year later, thanks Dark Brandon, prices are almost $2 a gallon lower and continue to fall. Prices did not see a major spike over the Memorial Day weekend and have fallen since then, down 5 cents a gallon in Springfield area over the past week to an average of $3.48 a gallon for regular unleaded. That's almost 20 cents a gallon lower than a month ago.
We love you guys and hope you're having a good week. I know there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people on the East Coast who are dealing with smoke from these Canadian wildfires. It's just horrifying. We're thinking of you, and we just want to thank you for listening and supporting our show. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. But this week's Internet Kitty is a dog.
A dog
named Oliver. Oliver is a schnoodle. That's a schnauzer times a poodle who is about 6 years old. He is bordering on illegal levels of cute. I mean, This dog is just adorable.
Oh.
And of course, Oliver only eats freshly poured pet food. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store dreck, your pets will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured.
Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord,
And you can visit Oliver at our Facebook page or website, and you can send your internet kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go! Postal Unions! Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. I can't believe we still have to say it. #FiredJoy.
I know.
Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage, iced or regular, for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our full-time job. We wanted to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude for your donations. Your support helps us to continue to produce this podcast. We couldn't do it without you, and we're really, really grateful. Please share our show on social media, and if you love this podcast, get someone else to listen to, and thank you for doing that. Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are really hoping that, true to form, the exact second we put this podcast in the can, Il Duce is indicted.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2023 DGBG Productions.
And now, as promised, here is our first outside media appearance ever. It was in 2011 at the now-defunct Heartland Cafe in Chicago, Illinois. That was just steps from my condo, where we were interviewed by Katie Hogan. Katie pulled us to the stage just because we were having lunch with Matt Filipovich. Hey, Matt, thanks a lot. Live from the Heartland, aired on WLUW 88.5 FM. Here we are from 2011. No fair remembering stuff. The Professional Left.
Guests up here who I'm going to call at their request, Blue Gal and Drift Glass. Hi, guys.
Great to be on the show. Thank you.
Good to see you.
We're meeting on air, all you folks out there. So where do you guys come from? I know I just got you from table number 71, but you do something called the Professional Left podcast.
Mm-hmm.
How come?
Well, we're both bloggers. We both got radicalized about 6 years ago and started blogging then. And I live in Chicago, and Blue Gal lives in the cornfield, as we say, downstate. And about 70 episodes ago, a little more than a year ago, we started doing a podcast, and we were going strong ever since.
Wow. What radicalized you 6 years ago?
2004 election.
Say that again?
The 2004 election. The fact
that one.
So many people could be so wrong in one day. So it was heartbreaking.
Assisted by vote fraud in Ohio.
Well, yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And is that what radicalized you as well?
Yeah, well, that's what got me blogging. I started blogging Election Day 2004.
Really?
And took it from there, yeah.
And did you meet via the
We did. We met
web
via
sphere?
blogging.
We did.
And,
wow.
The blogosphere is the best dating service ever.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to have to take your word for that.
Like Matt Filipovich, Driftglass and I are engaged to be married. We're getting married in August.
Oh, congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
Out there and meeting each other on the web line.
And we owe Robert Gibbs a great debt of gratitude for the name of our podcast, because he's the guy the presidential spokesman who came out and called us the Professional Left in a sneering, awful, sort of demeaning way.
That's right.
And we're both sitting on my couch going, I wonder what we should call this podcast of ours. We don't have a name yet. Thank you, Robert Gibbs. Thank you so much for your generosity of spirit and your turn of the phrase.
We will never forget.
No.
So clearly I have never seen or visited your site since we met about 2 minutes before I came on the air. But if I did, what would I find there? Is it stuff to listen to?
Yes, we're basically just a podcast. Driftglass blogs at driftglass.blogspot.com, and I blog at bgalrstate.blogspot.com. But our podcast is a separate enterprise, professionalleft.blogspot.com, and we do a weekly show which drops Friday, right around noon Central Time. and we get to talk for 40 minutes about politics, and we laugh a lot too. I think it's a funny show.
Yeah, Matt's right.
Matt's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Comedy is a gateway drug.
Weekly?
It's every week.
Every Friday.
We do it every Friday. We haven't missed a Friday actually in over a year. We're on our 70th episode, and we are on iTunes also for you iPhone users out there.
And we get emails at 9, 10, 11 o'clock on Friday morning from regulars going, when's the damn podcast going to drop?
Oh, really?
Yes, we have a fan base that we're really very grateful for.
From all over the world. That's the really cool thing about the internet.
I know, I love that.
All over the world. Isn't it great?
Well, this is webcast, this show. And we have friends in Montana, California, other places I'll go off the air and I'll find an email from them saying...
We get a lot of really good feedback from red states, from liberals in red states going,
Oklahoma,
you gave me
Texas.
vocabulary.
Yeah. I need you. I want you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, isn't that great? Isn't
I know. It's true. It's why, figures like 51% of the base Republican vote believes that... I just can't... There's more smart people out there than we know about. Than is obvious by our media and anything else that we could measure.
And one of the things that we have emphasized on our podcast, too, is not being ashamed to be a liberal, because the other side has made the word liberal such a dirty word.
Yeah, right.
And
it's bogus.
You have to reclaim it, and you really have to own it. And I think we've helped a lot of people in those red states sort of reclaim the word liberal and what their moral values are, and to recognize that they have moral values of caring for their neighbor, and that they can stand up for those moral values. We really try to emphasize that.
And that standing up for your moral values against folks who are sort of waving the morality banner.
Well, there's a huge difference between having moral values and moralizing.
Yeah, very good.
Well, and the Paul Ryans of the world have a coherent ideology. They come out of a very clear, they know what the answer to every question is. And liberals sometimes get trapped into retail discussions of each and every issue and forget this is a moral issue. This is a moral crusade. And you have to fight ideology with ideology and morality with morality. And you can't get sucked into debating, tiny issues that distract you.
This whole economic meltdown that we've been having, I think, is an opportunity to have that conversation about morality.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because if you actually are guided by some kind of moral ruler, measuring stick, whatever, you don't go to war. That's not the top priority on your budget.
Right.
So what gets the most money in your budget is what you prioritize as the most important thing to do. Right. Whether that's educate kids, take care of old people, both of the above.
Absolutely.
That sort of thing. And if we stop starting wars and initiating more higher level of conflicts, how much money would we have to be doing this?
Well, and start at the very beginning of that economic crisis and say, we have now proven beyond any doubt that the casino economy does not work.
Thank you.
Let's go back to making things. Let's go back to middle class people being paid a living wage, a decent wage, to do productive work.
Yeah.
And suddenly a lot of your problems evaporate because people have money and schools have funding and parents have stable homes and education gets paid for.
I think a lot of people wonder if they can even return to making things. The whole, Rust Belt thing about,
That's a thing of mine. Yes, we can. Absolutely.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. The manufacturing economy in Illinois is, I think, third most productive. There's been 26 months of straight growth in manufacturing. There are probably 300,000 people in Illinois who work in manufacturing. And most importantly, this is one of those little facts that I just happen to have in my back pocket, manufacturing has what's called a multiplier effect.
Of course it does.
Every job in the manufacturing economy generates 5 jobs in the rest of the economy, as opposed to retail that generates 0.5 jobs in the retail.
All of us local first business owners use that same
absolutely
multiplier.
And we can do it. I mean, buying locally, trading locally, making locally, supplier
growing locally.
People absolutely cuts down on fuel costs. Your carbon footprint decreases.
Sure.
The people who make windmills are manufacturers. People who make solar panels are manufacturers. So we absolutely can. We just have to not let it slip away from us. And it's really important that we.
And we haven't already.
No, I don't believe that.
With all of the goods that are made in China,
well, to be a liberal is to have faith.
All right. Okay. Falling back on that faith thing, are you?
Darn right.
Yeah, I know all about that. So, Blue Gal.
Yeah.
You said something to me when you came back up about you could talk to me about Kent State because I had
sure
mentioned
can.
it because May 4th coming up and that is the day. And you said you were there.
I was there. I was in first grade.
Yeah, I was going to say you had to be a babe in arms.
But my
and
dad-
also, why would that not have radicalized you?
Oh,
of course, 'cause
yeah,
you were
it
in
absolutely
first grade.
did. Well, my dad was an art professor at Kent State, and my
Wow.
grandfather was a math professor at Kent State.
Wow.
And my mother got her master's degree from Kent State. So all that is old home for us. And
But you were actually on campus?
I was in school that day. My dad was teaching over at Hiram College in Ohio that day, and we were rushed home from school with sirens and smoke in the air. It was very terrifying. I went home, and my mother, for the first time in my life, had the front door locked. She unlocked it and let me in and locked the door again. And my two younger sisters, who were preschoolers at the time, she had put into her pajamas because she feared an evacuation. The whole town had been invaded by the National Guard.
Wow.
So the downtown had National Guard troops, the campus had National Guard troops, and there was smoke from the
Tear gas. Right.
actually wafting over the town. It
Wow.
was very terrifying.
Wow.
And I turned to the television. My sisters were just playing in the living room. They don't remember anything about it because it was just another day to play.
Sure.
But I saw Walter Cronkite talking about Kent on my little black and white TV, and it was exciting for a first grader to see our town on TV. But my mom explained to me, no, this isn't
Not
good.
for a good
This is not
reason.
good. And Dad came home, and we weren't sure whether we were going to be evacuated or not. It was really that scary. It turned out that no one was evacuated, but 4 students died. And that was a time when middle-class white people sent their kids of draft age to full-time campuses to keep them from being drafted.
Or shot.
And all of a sudden, their children are on campus where they're supposedly safe from the draft and safe from being shot, and they're being shot. And that really turned things around.
And they're being
in terms
shot
of
by
the
their
war.
government.
Yeah,
Right.
by their government.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
who would ever think that a Republican president would invade a country without permission, like Nixon did in Cambodia?
Exactly.
You would think that would never happen again after that, wouldn't you?
You would think. You would think.
And you look what's happening in Wisconsin. We both saw on the Rachel Maddow show, which we both thoroughly enjoy.
Yes, he's a good
girls'
educator.
The girls' school in Michigan.
Oh, Michigan, yes.
They're being rousted out by the cops. They're being arrested. They're being dragged out of their school because the governor has decided to put it on the chopping block. And you see grainy.
The governor has decided to what?
Put the school on the chopping block.
Right.
It's a school for pregnant girls that helps them get into college in Detroit.
What could be worse?
And you see grainy photos, you see jiggly photos of cops dragging kids, pregnant girls.
Pregnant girls
We haven't
into their
changed
cop
a
cars.
bit. We haven't changed a bit.
Holy smoke.
You know?
And the cops put their sirens on so that the girls' voices couldn't be heard as they were being arrested.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So is this on your site?
No.
Do you talk about that?
The Rachel Maddow stuff?
No, that was
But it's
last
on
night.
Rachel
Was
Maddow
that
show. It was
last
on
night?
last
Last
night.
night, yeah.
So
I gotta
go
check
to
that out.
MSNBC.com and
But
watch
everything
that.
else is on our site. Every single thing you could possibly
Everything
want
else.
is on
So
our site.
once again, your site. You guys speak into the mic and tell people where to find
Certainly.
you.
My blog is the Drift Glass blog at driftglass.blogspot.com.
That's called Drift Glass. DRIFTGLASS.
If you Google Drift Glass, I'm the first or second hit.
Okay.
And Blue Gal.
Same with Blue Gal. If you Google Blue Gal, you'll find me right away.
And Blue Gal also helps run the Crooks and Liars site, the massive, awesome
Oh, really?
Yes.
Crooks and Liars site. She's one of the key people
there every night on Open Thread. And actually, our podcast is always posted at the Open Thread on Saturday nights at Crooks and Liars. So if you're a Crooks and Liars fan, our podcast is there every Saturday night, 8:30 Pacific time, 10:30 Central.
Well, this is really just a very nice opportunity,
We're really
particularly because
grateful
you're
that we
not
could be here.
You're not normally in town. I know, Blue Gal, you're down in the boonies, as you put it. But professionalleft.blogspot.com.
Yeah.
Our guests today, and probably another time down the road,
I'll
I'd
bet
say.
you.
Our pleasure.
All right. right. Thanks a lot. Let's hear it for our guests from professionalleft.blogspot.com. You are listening to Live from the Heartland, which will be back again next week. Hopefully another sunny day. It is Easter weekend. Go out and play, everybody. Monday night is the Saving Green Together and Mayor in the Neighborhood. So we'll see you then. Thanks for listening. Power to the people.